Welcome to another episode of the Village Boy Podcast. It is your host, your one and only Village Boy, Trez. Today we're talking about the American greed. How did America get here where Trump is putting tariffs and trying to force China to the table where they can negotiate and have a fair deal? How did America get to this position today? To understand that, you have to first accept that America has a problem with being greedy, being selfish, being self consumed and self absorbed. The elites are greedy and think only about themselves and their money. Now, this is not an attack on the elite. This is just stating the facts and the truth. How did we get here? We got here because our elites, our industrialists, our capitalists decided to come up with free trade. Let's have trade across countries where we're not putting restrictions. I will sell you my products. You have no restrictions. You will sell your products to me. That was the concept Republicans introduced. On the one hand, the Republicans were pushing for free trade so that they can compete, produce more, and enter more markets. The Democrats are not people who think long term. The Democrats are like a charity organization. They don't understand the concept of capitalism. The Democrats only want to tax and define gender structure. The Democrats are a party that functions on two core principles. We are going to tax you, or we are going to define your gender. Democrats decided that they're going to tax corporations and businesses, set regulations that businesses could not even meet to be productive and profitable. You'll never hear the Democrats talk about let's be attractive business environment where we have lower taxes, less regulation, so we can attract businesses to come back to America and build better in America. You have to create a system where businesses come together and there's a culture within those businesses that the goal is to invest, create jobs for the people, build an institution where everybody thrives. The rich are still going to get richer, but the middle and the poorer people are going to have resources available to them where they can succeed. They can go to school affordably, they can have healthcare affordably, and they could have good jobs in all their communities. No, 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 no. That was not a democratic strategy. So, because the Democrats were taxing the companies and the Republicans were pushing free trade, businesses were like, now we have an open market. I'm going to uproot my company, take it to China, kill all the jobs in the area, in the township, local townships in Indiana, in Illinois, in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, kill the jobs in there, take the company to China, create jobs for the Chinese. And most importantly, the Chinese had one condition. If you're going to come to China and basically exploit our people short term, because the Chinese were thinking down the road, something that Americans don't do, except in war. The Chinese were thinking down the road. If you're going to exploit our people for cheap labor to make your products really cheap and violate conditions, regulations, we're not going to put in place regulations. If you're going to enjoy that, all we ask of you is that share with us your intellectual property. Intellectual property was all that the Chinese needed. They had the labor force and they needed to learn how to make these things. And American companies didn't care because they knew they owned the American market. So they were quick to give out, dole out. They're like, here you go. Here's our intellectual property. I mean, your net. This was 30, 40 years ago. China was still a poor country. They did not think that this China today was going to exist. Selfishness and greed. They only thought about themselves, making their profits, selling their cheap products in the American market. But what China was doing behind the scene was learning, absorbing 30 years of reading and learning the blueprints from the master himself or herself, you're going to get better than the master. If you put in 30 years of studies, you are going to be a master in your craft, a master in your arts. That's what we see of China today. They looked at America and say, they have a lot of things that we want, but we don't want to become like America. Let's listen to what Stephen Miller had to say.
The original sin of how the modern economy in America is structured, the president talks about more than anything else. And it gets to Caroline's point about the overall economic vision. The original sin was that we created a tax system that punished you for making something in America and rewarded you for making something in China or a foreign country. So in other words, if you had your factory in America, you paid a sky-high corporate tax rate, you were beaten to death with regulation, you had radically unaffordable energy prices, and Washington just in every way made your life miserable.
So you heard what he had to say. He called it the original sin, but it's also his party that ensured that those companies left. You cannot say specifically what Republicans have ever done to make American lives better. Republican model is everybody for themselves, God for us all. That's the Republican model. You have to be your own man. You have to pull yourself by your bootstraps. This is the model that the Republicans teach poor people, that we're going to shift the government away from you so that you could be your own person, your own selfish individual. You could work in your own lane, do your own stuff, and succeed in your own way. But why has America not succeeded as fast as China? China is creating almost 100 millionaires every year. So Steve Miller is saying what was the problem, but he did not break it down to say the Democrats were taxing because they're a tax and spend party. If they're not talking about your agenda, they're taxing you to death. That's the Democrat Party. But the Republican Party on the other side is also not pro-American. Don't let the slogans fool you. This is just a party of slogans. They're not an invest in the American people type of party. The Republican Party is, I'll take the government out. Let's reduce the size of the government so you can be free to do whatever you want to do. You are your own person. The Chinese looked at that model, Mr. Stephen Miller, and said, no, we're not going to have individuals run riot and do whatever they want. We're going to have a system that works for everybody. Everybody succeeds together. A community built initiative. That was the Chinese model. When you stand and you look at China, China owns about 700 billions in American bonds. That's not a poor country. China basically owns America. China produces everything that is sold in America, everything that's consumed. China has American consumer addicted to the products coming out of China. So what Trump is trying to do should start the conversation of Americans asking, do we want the selfish initiative of I'm going to build myself, or do we want a community build? We're going to build the community block by block, brick by brick. We're going to make schools and vocational programs affordable and reachable across all the kids, across all backgrounds. Inner city kids have access to vocational programs, community college, to learn and harness the skills of tomorrow and what the market needs. Black inner city kids only look at music, entertainment, sports, football, basketball as a way out of poverty. You cannot go into an inner city and the kids are telling you, I want to be a tooling engineer, I want to be a DevOps analyst, I want to be a project manager. This are not conversations that inner city kids have because they don't even know what those things are. But they will tell you, I want to be a linebacker, I want to be a quarterback, I want to be a rapper, I want to act in Hollywood, because that's all they know. If they're not caught up in some drug warfare, America needs to rethink. Trump has started the conversation. Americans need to have an honest conversation with themselves and the reality. And when they look at the competition that is in front of them, it's going to be China, it's going to be Malaysia, it's going to be Singapore, it's going to be a lot of countries that are going to leapfrog America. And America is only going to go downhill because of this selfish, self interest, greedy mentality that we have, that I'm going to make it out on my own.
And the political class didn't do anything about it. They allowed it to happen.
Correct.
Well,
they sat by and watched it happen
Yes.
for decades.
They actually wanted the opposite to happen, especially if you look at the 90s when we had NAFTA, we had the WTO, we had the entry of China into the WTO. The goal very clearly was to remove U.S. tariff and trade barriers to make it easier for people to outsource to China. Because once we gave China what we call permanent normal trade relations, all of your manufacturers in the United States who are thinking in short terms in terms of quarterly earnings and that kind of thing, they said, listen, now I can go move my factory from Indiana or wherever, I can put it in China, I can put it in Mexico, and I know I will have sure access to the U.S. market. Today, President Trump is saying the best place to make American products and sell American products is here in America.
Yes, and what he's saying is true, but if you're bringing the companies back, where are the people with the skills? Just broken people running around the streets, can't tell if they're a man or a woman. You think that's a problem in China? You think that's a focus for China right now? No. The people are laser focused, and Americans are distracted with social wars, culture wars. It's not enough to bring the jobs back. You need to have Americans ready to put in the work and the sweat to ensure that they're pro Americans. They're willing to see that America is competing with the likes of China, the likes of India. So, if Elon Musk was to bring back some Tesla jobs to mainland America, Austin, Milwaukee, put a plant in Milwaukee, he's still going to apply for H-1B visas to bring in 10,000 Indian coders and IT guys to come work in there, because he's not going to find 10,000 Americans with the skill sets to work on those plants. So it's not enough to just say Trump wants the companies to come back. We need to have a national conversation of where we want to go as a country. Now, America needs to be learning from China. America has lost the football. America has fumbled the football. China recovered the football. America is in a defensive position to ensure that China doesn't make the touchdown and win the game. But that requires a strategy. And there's an analysis on an analogy that says defense wins game. But you need a strategy, which right now America does not have. If I ask you, what is the American strategy that is going to work for Americans, not for the elites, not for the richest 1%, not for the corporate oligarchs, not for the vulture capitalists, not for people who are just in it for the money, but people who are in it to see America rise, to see America succeed, to ensure that Americans are succeeding across the board, to ensure that once again, children are loving Americans. Look at the liberal kids. The liberal kids hate America. I mean, the liberal kids are rooting for China to win because they hate Donald Trump. How do you change that mentality? How do you change the perspective that, irrespective of our differences, if we are fighting a foreign enemy, you have to protect the home first. Once we're done protecting the home, we can continue our internal fights. You can continue hating Trump, but you're doing it internally. You're not rooting for China to win. You're not putting Chinese flags on your bio and saying, I stand with China. These are liberal kids. How do you incorporate these children, these kids, into an America that they love? How do you make the Democrat Party see America as a project that they want to help heal, not destroy, not tax out of success? So it's not enough to bring the jobs back. We must learn from the Chinese. We must get back to the basics. Both parties failed us. The Village Boys scorecard today, it's an F for the Democrat Party. They always get an F on my side of things. And because the Republicans are acting like hypocrites, which they are, I'm giving them an F plus. Today, the Republicans get an F plus for ensuring that American jobs go to China, go to India at the expense of America, for ensuring that they don't have a plan to protect America, for Americans, to it, to it, to for failing to ensure. The Republican Party gets an F plus for failing to ensure that Americans are competitive with the Chinese, for failing to ensure that Americans are as healthy as the Chinese, for failing to stop the export and exodus of American companies to foreign countries only to sell the products back to Americans, for turning Americans into lethal consumers, addicted to cheap Chinese products, for destroying the foundation, which is the manufacturing sector of America. The Republican Party gets an F plus. If you like the content, give me a like. Let's get over 100 likes. If you like the content, hit the subscribe button. It's your host, Village Boy, on the Village Boy podcast. Thank you.